a large bowl, I'm adding 325 grams or 2.5 cups of bread flour. I prefer to use bread flour because it has a higher protein and gluten content, so it gives better structure to your bread. Then to that, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of finely milled matcha powder, which adds a very mild green tea flavor, but I really used it for color, and you'll see why later. So now in a pitcher, I have 245 mils or 1 cup plus 1 teaspoon of milk that I warmed up in the microwave for about a minute or so, just until it reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want to go over that where the milk is too hot and then kill your yeast, so just keep that in mind. You just want it nice and warmed up, just like you would a baby's bottle. And so I added my yeast along with some sugar, just stir it around to help soften up that yeast and dissolve some of those little granules. And just let it sit on your countertop for about 5 to 7 minutes to allow the yeast to activate and get nice and bubbly. So essentially what's happening here is the yeast is waking up, it's feeding on the sugar that we added as well as the naturally occurring sugar in the milk, the lactose, and it should become nice and bubbly if your yeast is alive and active, and then it can help leaven our bread. So now I'm just adding that wet mixture straight into the dry mixture in the large bowl. Super simple here. So now I'm adding 1/4 cup or 60 mils of condensed milk, which gives our bread not too much flavor. Honestly, it's more of a textural thing. It helps to improve the softness, the fluffiness, and also the tenderness of the bread, even a few days after baking. So now for the flavoring for our bread, I'm using some pandan extract here, which I found at my local Asian supermarket, or of course you can find it online. I'm using 1.5 teaspoons of pandan extract. If you don't know what pandan is, it's actually a plant that's native to Southeast Asia, and so you usually find it in Filipino, Vietnamese, and Thai desserts. And it naturally is green in color, so that's why I added the matcha powder earlier to give it a little bit more of that green color because the extract didn't have it. And if you never tasted pandan, it has like a vanilla flavor and essence to it, but less floral and more coconutty and I would say tropical tasting. So I just mix all my ingredients together till all that flour was moistened, and I warn you now, this dough is very, very, very sticky. So if you never worked with bread dough before, or you're really not used to working with bread dough by hand and not in a stand mixer, it could be kind of tricky and difficult to make, I'll be honest with you, because you can see just how much is sticking to the pastry board, my work surface, and also my hands. It's quite a mess, but honestly, I just wanted to keep it at 75% hydration. So a lot of these bakers, bread bakers, will often refer to what percentage hydration their dough is, and so I wanted to keep this at 75%, and I was stubborn. I didn't want to add any more flour to my work surface, any bench flour I didn't want to add, so I want to make sure my bread was nice and moist. So I decided, instead of just fighting it, I decided to just let my dough rest for about 20 minutes after mixing all the ingredients together, and after 20 minutes it kind of came together into more of a solid massive dough. And I got smarter here. I put on some latex gloves so that way it's a lot easier to work with, and it wasn't sticking as much to my gloves. And now I'm just adding 3 tablespoons or 39 grams of unsalted butter that's very soft at room temperature. You can tell by the texture of the dough there, it's still kind of sticky and very soft, not like your typical bread dough. I want to prove to you that you could do this by hand. You don't need any sort of fancy kitchen equipment, no KitchenAid stand mixers here, although of course that will work as well. And so I just kneaded it. I don't even know if you call this kneading, because it's not like the texture of regular bread dough, because it's still very, very soft at this point, as you can tell, but it's slowly coming together. It's not sticking so much to the counter surface, and definitely not sticking as badly to my hands, especially with that latex glove, so that helps of course. So after about 20 minutes of kind of kneading it more or less, I went ahead and just scraped it up, placed it into a large ungreased bowl, and just kind of nestle it in there. That's going to be its home for the next 1.5 hours or so. Just make sure to cover it as well. Just like any bread dough, you don't want it to dry out on the surface, so make sure to cover it up. And then just let it proof. My favorite proofing spot in the house is always the oven. So I have my oven turned off, and I have my dough to the left there, and then to the right I have a large bowl filled with some hot boiling water, just to create that humid, steamy environment that yeast loves. So after about 1.5 hours, here's my dough. It's about double in size, and it's actually a lot more pliable. It's easier to work with at this point. although still very sticky compared to other types of dough. So just go ahead and knock all the air out of it. And definitely, if you have those latex gloves, make sure to use them. Make the whole job a lot easier. So at this point, I'm just taking my big mass of dough there. And of course, I have my handy dandy kitchen scale. I'm just going to cover it and then weigh the whole weight of the dough. So that way I can just divide it by 12 and I have 12 equally sized portions.
Okay, Google. 634 divided by 12.
The answer is approximately 52.833333.
52.8333.
So now just take the dough, cut it up into, Google says about 53 grams per little bun. So, you know, plus or minus 5 is not a big deal. So I do like to use my kitchen scale, makes the job a lot easier. That way you can make sure that each little bun is roughly the same size. You know, quick pro tip here is that anytime you're making little buns or bread dough, just make sure to cover the rest of the dough that you're not working with. And now for each little bun, I'm just flattening it out onto my work surface. I did not add any additional bench flour onto the surface. A little bit of adhesion and tack onto the surface is not a bad thing because it makes it roll out a lot easier. And I'm just rolling it into, you know, a long rectangle. I don't know what the size and shape is. The whole goal of this is to knock out all the air as much as possible. That way your dough, once it's done baking, it helps to kind of create a nice even interior, and there's not any large air pockets or gaps in your bread. So once I rolled it out and flattened all the air out of it, I'm just rolling it up kind of like you would, you know, cinnamon roll, more or less. And just make sure it's a nice tight roll so you don't have any large gaps in between. And once you have your little cylinder there, I want you to repeat the same procedure. Just go ahead and turn the dough like the other side, the other direction. And then just do the same process, roll it out as flat as possible, knocking all the air out of it. And then just rolling it up, not lengthwise, but the opposite way. And then just form it to the best of your ability into a little ball. And just roll it around, or whatever shape you like. You know, be creative. You can do oblong shape, you can do, I don't know. I'm not that creative apparently. I just stick to little balls. So go ahead, and once that's all rolled out into a little sphere, place it into a generously buttered 9x13 baking pan. And also a quick tip here, if you find that a lot of your dough is sticking to your rolling pin, especially wooden rolling pins, as you're rolling the dough, it does help to kind of scrape out any like excess dough that's stuck onto your rolling pin. And then once all your little balls are rolled out, you want to cover it loosely with some plastic wrap. So now just go ahead and proof your little buns in the oven. Again, that's turned off. Just place a large bowl filled with hot boiling water, close the oven door, and just let it rest there for about 1.5 hours until it doubles in size. It's beautiful, so soft and plush, and you just want to take a nap on it. So now I'm just brushing it with some egg wash. So it's 1 large egg beaten together with either milk, cream, or even water, and basically just brush the top, just gently grace the top of your little buns, not to deflate them, of course. And the egg wash just gives it a nice golden brown sheen and glisten to it. So now just bake your buns at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius for about 15 minutes or so, just until it's golden brown on top like you see there. Beautiful shine on top. It's so good. Try to restrain yourself from not burning your mouth when it's piping hot, even though it smells so good. Freshly baked bread is nothing like it. But I can't believe the texture of this bread. It's unlike any other little bread or dinner rolls that you ever had before. It's so soft, fluffy, just melts in your mouth. So good. You have to try it. And if you've ever made homemade bread before, you know it doesn't last as long, quite as long. Even the next day it gets a little bit dry on you, but this one is definitely not the case. I think it's because of the condensed milk. It really helps to retain and hold on to that moisture so it tastes fresh the next day and probably a few days afterwards. So make sure to give it a try. Let me know in the comments below what you think, as well as subscribe, hit that notification bell to get notified every time I post a new video, which is every Friday. And don't forget to smash the like button. I'll see you back here next time. Bye.